Hey there. Happy Thursday afternoon, you all. My name is Jen Smith, and I am here to introduce today's lunch special. The lunch special is a production of Cornell's Center for Regional Economic Activity and specifically of the Grow New York program, of which I'm the program director. In these little brief half-hour bite-sized chunks of information, we're letting entrepreneurs and the entrepreneur curious student body at Cornell talk to each other about the innovation. This is in part to kind of facilitate those conversations and provide some meaningful, meaty extracurricular activity for students who are no longer on campus, but additionally to promote the applications for Grow New York being open. Grow New York is a $1 million food and ag startup competition. The applications are open presently and will remain open through July 15th. You can learn more about the competition and how to apply at our website, which is www.grow-ny.com. And our live pitch competition is going to occur in November. So stay tuned for more details about how to watch that. You can also follow Grow New York on social at grow-ny. As I said, today is going to be a quick conversation, just 30 minutes in the middle of your day. Please, if as the subject and the interviewer are talking, if you have questions, go ahead and submit those through the QA functionality, which you'll find on the bottom of your screen. You can type those questions in, I'll gather them, and then after our interviewer and subject have had a time to talk for a little while, I'll pop on and begin to ask some of those questions of them and get you guys answers. This will be 30 minutes. You'll be back on your way at 12:30. And we're going to take a brief summer hiatus, but we will be recommencing this lunch special series as a semi-monthly series after July 4th. So again, follow our social at grow-ny for news and announcements about who our participants will be. Today, we're going to get some answers from the source around how to get buy-in on pretty far out innovation. We've got Caleb Scott, who's the founder of Scotland Yards Group here. And to interview him, we've got Will Shepard, who's a BSA candidate at Cornell Cals. So Caleb, Will, you want to turn your cameras on and turn your mics on, and you can go ahead and get the conversation started.
Hello. Well, I just want to say thank you to Caleb for taking the time to tell us a little bit about himself and Scotland Yard Group. I think a great spot to start would just to let everyone know a little bit about Caleb and his background, both in agriculture and in solar.
Hey guys, thanks. Yep, Caleb Scott here with the Scotland Yard Group. Agriculture and solar, there you have it. Kind of a new thing. This agrivoltaic model, co-location model. There's new names coming up all the time for it. But yeah, so I got my start in agriculture. Well, we're a generational family, come from generational farms. When I was little, we had a dairy farm, and then my grandmother raised Morgan horses in 2012, just as a way to diversify my portfolio and have a little bit of fun. I started a hobby farm with some Icelandic sheep at the time. And I did that with my brother, and we are still doing that. It's no longer a hobby farm. I also own and operate the Scotland Yard Group design build firm. So that's more in the contracting and construction fields. And I've got several other businesses in the central New York area, a coffee roastery, a grocery store, and a few other businesses as well, and hemp as of last year.
Perfect. So at what point did you see there was an opportunity for you to combine your past in agriculture and what you've now learned with solar? When did you kind of get the idea for what is now Scotland Yard Group?
Yeah, so that's a great question. In 2014, we got the maintenance contract, the operations and maintenance contract for vegetation control at the Cornell solar sites. At that time, there was only one. There are now currently 6 separate small arrays, and the contracting side of our company took the liberties to execute the contract, and it was terrible. It isn't like anything else. A lot of these companies, they grew up, really fast. They weren't considering the vegetation control when they designed and built these sites. And we on a 10-acre site, we spent about 147 man hours of weed whacking in hot summer weather, bending over on your hands and knees underneath panels. We had to buy specialty equipment because a regular rotary mowers threw rocks against the panels. So we were using flail mowers, track-driven skid steers. And it just became an endeavor that we made a commitment to try and not do again, at least that way. And since I had the sheep already, that's what kind of spurred this along. I thought to myself, gosh, it just makes sense to put sheep out on these solar sites. At that time, there may have been one other company in the United States that I could find down in North Carolina that was toying with the idea. I don't know if they had actually implemented it or not, but in the United States, it was unheard of. And we were looked at very strangely when I initially proposed this as an alternative and possibly a less expensive method. Certainly, we wanted to reduce greenhouse gases. I mean, the caustic gas, the weed whackers and mechanical mowing equipment is just counterproductive for solar. We wanted to repurpose the fields. We wanted to, let's face it, like New York needs to have a jump start in the economy. And this was a great way with it that we saw, well, hey, we can expand our farm now with this additional land and get paid to feed our sheep. And that's what we did. We pursued it for a year and a half, trying very hard to get contracts in place. There was nothing there to allow us an easy avenue. Lawyers were like, what are sheep gonna do? How can you do this? How can we write contracts? People were confused as to whether sheep would jump on the panels and chew on wires. So we had to do some research and development in the industry. And that's kind of what spurred things along.
Thought process, it seems, that dual use. So people know a little bit now about yourself and kind of the beginning of Scotland Yard Group. But you've also done some work with the American Solar Grazing Association, or the ASGA. So do you want to tell a little bit about what exactly the ASGA is and what your role is in that, and how you've worked together with Scotland Yard Group?
Yeah, so ASGA was founded by myself and other industry professionals as a as a way to bring awareness to what it is that we're doing, streamline contracts, be a support and help center um, for the industry as a whole, and to do research and development, to create best practices, because this is a new thing, and by new I mean a few years old. It's been done around in other countries for a while now, but solar in general is fairly new. I mean, ground mounted community solar projects are in the scope of this world are new. Animal husbandry is thousands of years old. This is the first time that we're combining the two. So there are going to be problems and hiccups and things that we need to address. And we just thought that it would be best to do that through creating the American Solar Grazing Association. So a team of us got together and we've worked hard at doing that, and we're very proud of what we've accomplished there. We've got members all over the country, actually all over the world now, really, and we're I would like to say we're on the forefront of this industry.
That's great. So maybe now would be a good time to kind of explain that business model of Scotland Yard Group and past projects you have done, how much better that has been with this new kind of non-traditional way of doing the maintenance.
Yeah, great question. So let's see. Past projects and future projects for us include everything from Air Force, munitions buildings, and we're grazing commercially all over. My business model specifically is one that allows for rapid growth and expansion. What we do is a little different than what other farmers do. We actually go out, acquire the contracts, cut the red tape, and then for sites that we don't care for with our own sheep in-house, we subcontract to a local farmer in whatever area we're in. So we'll go to Bowling Green, Kentucky, or we'll go to Annapolis, Maryland, and help another farmer get set up in this. Oftentimes, your average farmer doesn't really want to deal with the rigors of contracts and liability and the business side of things. In that regard, they just want to raise their sheep and be a shepherd. And so we allow that avenue. Obviously, there are other farmers who want to scale and they want their own contracts, and they want and they have the time and ability to do that. And those, we encourage to just, capitalize on this opportunity on their own. But we're there for the farmers that otherwise wouldn't want to do that. That's our business model anyway. We do offer mechanical mowing as an alternative through the contracting side of the company. We also have, skid steers, payloaders, backhoes, dump trucks, water handling systems, so that we can really be like a one-stop shop, sort of. But our primary focus is on the agrivoltaic model with using sheep.
Gotcha. So you mentioned there a little bit about the challenges of working with farmers, and maybe a good question would be, what are the biggest challenges you have faced? Is that the largest, or has it been just finding the acceptability from society, not like seeing this as a non-traditional way? Like, why would we do that? Or in New York, being a largely dairy farming state, and the switch to sheep? Has that been hard?
Yeah, those are all great questions and all things that we've had to kind of deal with over the years. So um, to the dairy thing, right now, dairy farmers in New York are really struggling. And this is
Hmm.
a great opportunity for them to use their existing infrastructure, land, and resources to actually diversify their portfolio. Um, there is a learning curve, obviously, to raising sheep over cattle, but it's all still farming. And if that's your passion, then this is a way that they can maybe stop the bleeding in some respects, and open their farmland up to having solar and also being the vegetation control specialists taking care of the operations and maintenance portion of it. So one of the problems is farmers oftentimes tend to give their services away. They don't, in general, they're not used to valuing their time. They'll work 110 hours a week, and then they'll sell some animals at the end of the year, and they don't ever really factor in the value of their time. So this is something that has happened where farmers are like, oh, I'll put my sheep out there for free. And you're like, well, that's not a very good business model. One, it's not replicatable. It doesn't help the industry. And I get that you're feeding your sheep, whereas otherwise you'd have to put them on your pasture or get hay. However, you've got lost opportunity costs, you've got driving expenses, you've got watering containment systems, you've got extra insurances, and they're just not thinking about these things. So that's where we kind of come in and maybe hold their hand a little bit and say, okay, well, this is how you want to do this. The other thing is, pasture rotation, whether they're doing a put and take model, whether they're doing a sustained grazing model, whether they're doing, 6 months off, 6 months on sort of thing, or they're overstocking it for 2 weeks and then putting them onto a different site. There's so many different variables. Looking at forage content, like what's actually available for the sheep to eat on the site. There are so many things to kind of take into consideration that I think are really easy to forget. And then the other thing is, I think oftentimes the farmers, when they're dealing with contracts and stuff like that, they don't want the liability of actually having to maintain it to a certain specs. They want to put their sheep on and take them off when they want. But then there is this liability that it's like, oh wait, no, you can't have thistles just growing up and shading out panels. You have to actually maintain your site. So there's a cost to that. As well to factor in. So there's farmers that don't have the resources to do that. So they're scared because they're like, well, what if my sheep don't eat it? Am I liable to have to pay $10,000 to have a mowing company come in and mow this down? So these are all things that the farmers, hurdles the farmers have to deal with, that we want to be there to help them with.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So then obviously those are some challenges, but one looming challenge that we are all facing right now is this pandemic. It's definitely affecting entrepreneurs, and just maybe we should talk about how it's affected you and how are you overcoming it or dealing with it, and its impact on solar and the maintenance industry as itself.
Yeah, that's great. So I think on the traditional mechanical side of things, where you have to have one guy per truck, you got to send 10 guys there to the site to mow. That's 10 trucks. I mean, that is very hard. And fortunately, we don't have to deal with that anymore. So this actually, I've felt, has been of my business ventures the most recession proof, you know. So these sites still need to be maintained. The contracts are still in force. And once you get the sheep onto the site, it's you know, there's obviously economies of scale that can be brought into play, but the amount of work um, is easily doable with one or two shepherds and a dog. So it's not, and because it's farming, you know, or you're oftentimes with family members, you kind of can get around a lot of the hardships that other people are facing in this industry. So I think that, yeah, I think that in some respects, this is an eye opener for the long-term feasibility of this sort of model, at least from what I've seen.
That's really great to hear. I mean, gives hope to all of us. um, so then I think maybe we
Yeah.
should end kind of these questions with what's next for Scotland's Yard Group, and where do you think there's opportunity, and what are your goals to achieve that by?
Yeah. So, right now with the mandated expansion of the solar industry, we're looking at doubling and tripling and in time quadrupling the amount of ground mounted solar arrays. What that's going to mean for us is growth. And it's going to mean for New York, tremendous amount of growth. In New York, we could compete with New Zealand for lamb exports. We're importing a lot of our lamb right now. We we're we have a lot of things that need to be overcome. Slaughterhouse bottlenecks, but the demand is there. We don't produce the amount of lamb and sheep that we need, one, to either even take care of the solar sites or feed the cities and suburbs. We're still importing a tremendous amount. So there's a huge opportunity here for farming. There's a huge opportunity here for environmental energy savings and carbon outlay. You know, we're saving. I don't. This may not be an exact matrix, but it might be like 9 metric tons per 2 megawatts or per 10 acres of carbon. I mean, that's huge. And you think about 140 hours with a weed whacker. Weed whackers are more detrimental to the environment than an SUV. And how far could you drive an SUV in 140 hours? Back and forth across the United States a couple times. I mean, that's just one mowing.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you think of that compounded site after site after site after site, and you think of the amount of, you know, if we overwintered 60,000 sheep in 2015, we're going to be overwintering 300,000 sheep in 2025. You know, we might be overwintering 1 million sheep, and in, you know, just to maintain the solar. So in the years ahead. So this is an opportunity, one, for farmers to make money, to build up the ag business, to take out, you know, to repurpose fallow fields, to bolster dairy farmers' revenue streams, and save on the environment, and in general start producing New York raised, solar grazed lamb products, and you know, even when it comes to wool or you know, or meat, you know, we can help all facets of this industry, and it's a great way to be, you know, to get a farm into the black quick when you're getting paid to feed your animals.
I'm going to jump in. So there was a question from the audience about sheep farming economics and incentivizing the growth, which you've touched on a little just as you're talking about looking ahead. But how are you getting the word out? What is the central message about how this can improve sheep farming economics and incentivizing people to maybe transition over to sheep farming?
Yeah, so it's going to grow organically as the demand grows, but for sure this needs to be, in my opinion anyway, an industry standard best practice. In general, it's as expensive or less expensive than traditional mechanical mowing. The sheep do a better job eating all around the panels and underneath everything. And we're dual purposing the land. So why not? Why not create it as a best practice? And as far as the economics goes, if you can make, I'm just going to throw some arbitrary numbers out here, but between maybe $350 and $900 per acre to feed your sheep, you're effectively doubling or tripling the value of your sheep. So if at the end of the year you're selling your sheep, your lamb for $150 at market, you just made $150 per an additional $150 per lamb, and you didn't have the cost of the food. So there's or you were able to farm your own field with hay and instead of grazing it and let your fields rest. So the economics of it work wonderfully. It's just the availability of the sites as they come online that'll be the determining factor, and then also the slaughterhouses and as well.
One final question that came in was, do the panels themselves have to be adjusted in any way in order to accommodate sheep grazing?
Oh, that's a great question. We have not seen that. So we have sheep grazing with panels 18 inches off the ground on the front side, and we have sheep grazing with panels 3 and 4 feet off the ground on the front side. We have sheep grazing with exposed externally laid wires that just kind of drape across the ground, and we have sheep grazing on tracker units that move with the sun. So we have not seen a difference. There may be more forage on one site versus the other if more sunlight can get underneath the panels, or if like they're tracking, for example. But I would say in general, it's not affecting the sheep themselves, maybe just the stocking density.
Great. Well, here we are at 12:30. I want to thank Caleb and Will for joining us for the lunch special, and Caleb for talking a little bit about Scotland Yards, and Will for bringing that dual expertise of someone who's grown up around livestock farming and also has worked in solar. So really interesting conversation. Thanks, everybody. Again, follow us on social and sign up for our email alerts, grow-ny.com, @grow-ny. We'll be back with lunch specials later in the summer. Thanks all.